Hello, how's everybody doing? Well, I got here early today because it was just so slow. And I think it's because for a long time, maybe like 2 years, I mean, people haven't been able to be with, their families and and go to the mall shopping and things like that. So this is the first year in a while that they've been able to, like go to the mall and spend time with their families. So I guess they don't take it for granted now. So it was like, I was working in this restaurant. This is my second job on the weekends, and hardly anybody was there. Um, and I'm almost sure, because if you go to the malls, I'm sure everybody's there at the mall or with their family. Everybody does things differently, now. So it gives me a little bit of time anyway, because now Sundays, it seems like at night I'm able to do more work as far as YouTube is concerned. This one is going to be on the boxes. I had some comments on the boxes, and it was a good idea, I guess. And I wanted to say how I go through the boxes um, successfully. First, I want to say the reason why they have the boxes, and I never realized that there was so many boxes, and it's not bad. It's just how the Jehovah Witnesses remember things. Like, how can I say? Because there's no events, there's no birthdays, there's no Christmas, there's no, like Easter, things like that, you know, things that normally that everybody else takes for granted. Oh, there's no, like, like wars. You don't think about the wars, what's going on in the world. Everything has to do with what's happening in the society of the Jehovah's Witness. So the memory is a little bit different. We have to remember things in a different ways. So I think that's why we have the boxes, which I never realized. But when I went back and tried to remember, it's just like everything is like it's neatly put away, but it's in like boxes. So that's how I came up with the boxes. And my friend helped me. She said she didn't help me, but she helped me because she believed in me. And when somebody believes in you, you need somebody to have interest in what you're talking about. And if one person has interest, there's 400 other people that have interest. That's what I learned from politics, actually. Um, just by studying in college, and I went to college late. You know that. I just want to say how to do it successfully because I get help with everything. And another thing, by being as a regular person, I'm not saying the world like the Jehovah's Witnesses, I'm getting out of that. But naturally, you go by different events, But like, as a Jehovah's Witness, you don't have the wars. I mean, I'm not saying the wars is good, but I'm saying, when okay, like how we are in the world. I'm not using it as a Jehovah's Witness term. I'm using it as a regular term. You know what's happening in the world, which is nothing wrong with it. But as a Jehovah's Witness, you don't think about that, okay? It's something to exclude yourself from. But now that I'm in the world, as we would say, which is not a bad term, is to say you're more familiar with like what's going on. Like everybody knows about the war in Ukraine now. Um, then we have the politics. I'm going to put wars under politics. Oh, yeah, just say wars. We can say government. Government issues like the president. When I was Jehovah's Witness, we didn't care who was voted in or who was voted out. We didn't know anything about the vice president. And all those things are not important. But all those things are like timelines because, like, when you study history, you you see how everything is like bunched together, but something was happening while something else was happening. So it's like it, oh, I was doing this when this happened, or I was doing that when this happened. But like I said, in the Jehovah's Witnesses, there's no such thing. Like I couldn't tell you about Martin Luther King. I knew when he passed away, but there was no, we never talked about what was happening in the society, like when he was alive, which is sad. So we never talked about, that Martin Luther King is trying to do this, or Martin Luther King is trying to do that. President Kennedy, we never talked about him, oh, he did this, oh, he did that, or he's doing this, or he did that. Actually, it was like passed away. But, we still didn't talk about what happened. I don't know exactly when, but I remember when he died. My father had an album of his funeral. Yes, it's just my father had an album of his funeral. And that's how I remember it, because I'm talking about Kennedy. I'm almost sure it was Kennedy. Yes. And the thing I remember is that we enacted his funeral. Like somebody was Kennedy, and then we did things like that. And we played the record, because they had a record about Kennedy's funeral or something. Yeah, it was Kennedy's funeral. And somebody would lay down like he was dead, and then we would go around the body. I know it's really strange, but we did all those things when we were Jehovah's Witnesses. But we had to use our imagination so much, because we didn't have those events, like we didn't watch things on TV. My parents didn't talk about politics. Those are all things that that help you to remember. And as I was growing up, of course, there was no politics, and the Jehovah's Witnesses were perfect. I mean, everything, we did everything. I mean, my concept of the governing body and who ran the Jehovah's Witnesses, they were like a god, they just knew everything, They knew about this, they knew about that. When they say don't use aluminum, my mother said, we can't use aluminum, don't use aluminum pots, Until the day I was like, aluminum? We can't use aluminum. And things like that. So all those things help you to not remember. I mean, I'm not saying remember, but kind of organize things that were happening. But it's like we don't have that. So what I did when I was going through the boxes, now I'm getting back. I'm sorry I went through that, but I wanted to show you about the Jehovah's Witness memory. And you can't link events with what was going on in your life. So I guess that's why and I'm almost sure other people did, because I talked to my sister. I mean, I could tell, when you grow up with somebody, you could just tell a lot of things just by when they speak. And I could tell how she remembers things, I'm sorry. So when I was going through the boxes, you want to go through some, or remember, trigger things that pretty much didn't have anything to do with Jehovah's Witnesses, because I thought about friends first. Some of my good friends I had that didn't really have anything to do with going out in service or anything, just some times I spent with them. So I was thinking about one of my best friends I had and the things that we went through. And that helped me out. And I noticed that it was so concealed, So that made it easy to face. So when you go through the boxes, it's easy to face things, because as a Jehovah's Witness, you separate things in these, like I said, in little compartments. And that was separated from all the other things I was doing. And it was really nice thinking about it, because it had to do with me. And that goes to a reason why you want to go through this, is because I found myself separating myself from myself. Like I was separating myself from when I was Jehovah's Witness and not a Jehovah's Witness. And then I was saying wait, that's me too. So why don't I just put everything together? So that's why I started going through the boxes. Going through the boxes. So that's the one thing I went through first. Is I went through, started enjoying some friends that I had, and then I had a best friend that lived close by where we lived. And I didn't even know he lived close by to where we lived because there was like a little forest separating us. And he says, one time I was at the meeting, he was an introvert, definitely. I helped him pretty much come out of it, but he would sit at the back of the Kingdom Hall when everybody would be talking and everything. And then one time I talked to him. I don't know how I talked to him, or he said, "Do you need a ride home?" or something like that. And I go, "Yeah." And he says, "Where do you live?" And I go, because my parents would just stay there all day long at the meetings. Some family members stay there so long when you drive with somebody to go to the meetings, and they like stay for a long time, and you're just waiting for them to leave. But he said, "I'll take you home." And I said, "Okay." So his name was Michael Civizari. And everybody's old. Just make a difference. I mean, like, I don't want to use the names, but it's good to use the names because, I mean, I'm old, they're old, and if they do hear it, it'll put some spark into their life. But so I went to his house, and he goes, "Where do you live?" And I noticed that, I think it's the way that he was driving or something like that, or the way we were describing where we lived. It sounded like we lived in the same direction. Because I was going, "Okay, go to Lord and such and such, such." And he goes, "Oh, I live over that way too." And he goes, "Why don't you drop, if you want, why don't you, you can come to my house first, we get something to eat." And I go, "Okay." But the way it sounded, it was like, the way we were going to his house, I said, "This is exactly the way we go to our house." So, but it was like going around, and then I was talking to him. I go, "I'm almost sure I live like right over there." And I noticed, because after I got finished eating, I said, I know that, I mean, we lived right over there. And I noticed that there was like, because ours is a new development, and his was like a very like country type, one single family home like thing, you know what I mean? Very, very old, and ours was a new development. And they had survived, like a little forest in between our houses. And I was able just to walk right to my house. And so now, how did I get there? So, how did I get to Michael Civizari when I was talking about? Okay, so that's another box. So I was telling you that that's how I did it. So he was another friend that I started, going into the boxes, because the first friend was an earlier time, and when I was younger. Then when I got older, I thought of him, and he was a little bit more in depth because he was in my congregation. And the only thing I thought about, though, was pretty much the things that didn't have anything to do with the Jehovah Witnesses, because like he worked in like oil, putting oil pipes together and stuff like that. And one time he bought dogs. He bought 2 dogs home, and it was Siberian Husky, and he gave me one, and he had one, and we used to call them not Starsky and Hutch, something like Starsky and Hutch or something like that, or I don't know, the dogs, yeah. So things like that helped me, because that was part of me, and it didn't have anything to do. I'm sorry for going on a tangent, but it was very relevant, because I'm showing you that how it can be fun, because it didn't have anything to do with Jehovah's Witnesses. Because I wasn't really, I mean, I followed Jehovah's Witnesses and everything, but I enjoyed my life, you know, which didn't have anything to do with, now I can see more, and you will see that a lot of things didn't have to do with the Jehovah's Witnesses, because it was my time, you know, because you go through all these meetings and everything, and then when you get these beautiful, you get some friends, you don't really talk about, we never really talked about, you know, like, we knew we had to go to the meetings, but after the meeting, we wouldn't talk about the meetings, you know, never. At least I didn't. There was no nice points or anything to remember about the Sunday meeting, the Friday meeting, or the Tuesday night meeting. And so that's how I started. And it was very good memories. And like I said, we got dogs, and I trained my dog. He didn't really train his dog, because I ended up living with him most of the time, being over his house. And we became friends. We were very close. And I just learned a lot of things from him. And it didn't have anything to do with the Jehovah's Witness, but it was another box I had opened up. But then, as I was going through the boxes, I noticed that it links. I started linking things together. Like from his house, I moved out of my house. Like when I moved out of my apartment, I was living kind of with him. I was living really with him. But then I went to the Spanish congregation, and there was a pioneer who needed a place to stay. He was moving from Florida, and he was coming up to us, and they go, well, why don't you, I was thinking, well, why don't I get my own apartment? Because I had my own job. I was working at the bank. See, nothing to do with the Jehovah's Witnesses. And I was hiding that from myself, because I was saying that I just cut off everything that had to do with Jehovah's Witnesses. But then, as I was opening the boxes, it had more. I was becoming more myself, because I was like, I'm not going to forget that. That was me. That was just me. So then I, because of Michael Civitzary, I noticed that that's the same, around the same time that I got my own apartment. So then you could kind of link the time together, because I know that my first friend, I was younger, and then when I got older was Michael Civitzary. So I was kind of putting my time and myself in perspective more, and it was just me. And then when I met the brother at a friend's house, we had to get together. I went through so many get-togethers. He was there, and he needed a place to stay. And I was saying, you know, I could get my own apartment. They go, you could get your own apartment? If you get your own apartment, he has a place to stay. So then I was thinking, something happened, and you see how I'm doing it, and that's how I opened up the boxes. And then then I went from Michael Civitzary, the beautiful friend I had. I wish I would never left his house. But anyway, I saw how I went through another time, and then I started getting older, and I wanted to get my own place. But I didn't really get my place. I needed a reason. So, and see how the boxes, just from one box, they had that one friend, and it was another box. Because the thing about it is that my friend, the Michael friend, it's just in a box. If you know about Jehovah's Witness, it's in a box. It's like, it's so hard to express, because you don't have those time mechanisms as we are in the world now. I can't say that, oh, it was the time that this, or my 30th birthday, or my 25th birthday, because there's no birthdays. I mean, you know when you become your birthday, but there's no celebration. Your brothers and sisters don't have any celebration. I don't know when. I only know one sister. I know it was March 13th, and that's her. That's the only one I can truly remember their birthday. And she had a birthday. I remember her birthday when I was 3. Um, so that's how we get these boxes. And then from Michael Civilizary, then there was another friend. I think his name was Hugo, and that's in another box. Okay. Okay. So, um, I mean, I started another box, but how I got there was the fact that I was, which opens up another box. I was like, I was, how can I say? I've never really liked my stepfather. It had to do with the Jehovah Witness. He was like so devout, overly, over the top. Um, and One time I used to get up early, like 6 o'clock in the morning, to go exercise before I go to work. Very active. And the bathroom was next to their room. And my mother came to me one time and goes, he says that, you wake up so early and it wakes him up. And I said, I'm getting up to go exercise. Right there triggered me to go, okay, well, I know. No. When she said that, I didn't get upset or anything. But I remember she was sitting on the ledge of on the couch, and I was down on the couch, and she was talking to me really nice, and she goes, it wakes him up. And that triggered me in another box. It was like, oh, wow. That means I can tell her that I'm going to move out. Because I didn't say anything. I just said, okay. And then I came to her, and then that made me decide, yes, it was the right decision. So to get my own apartment with this Hugo person. And, so anyway, I had to tell her. So I told my friends, I said, yes, we're going to get an apartment. And she goes, oh, you can get the apartment over here because I can help you get the apartment because you're going to live. And one of the friends says, you can live over here. I'll just tell them that, you're my friend and everything. It'll be a good reference. I said, okay. And I made all the decisions. And then when my mother told me that, I didn't say anything. I just knew I had a reason to leave home. So when I finalized everything, I went upstairs to my mother. It was at night. I just had got home. And she's watching a scary movie. I said, why are you watching a scary movie? I mean, I didn't know you liked to watch scary movies. So anyway, I said, that is so scary. I can't believe it. So anyway, I was talking to her. I love to talk to her when she's watching TV. So I said, Ma, I got an apartment. And she goes, I knew it. I knew that you were going to say that because when I told you about getting up early, you were so calm and so easy. She said, just go on. She goes, then you're going to have to live with the rats and everything. And I don't know why she said that, but it was true because they did have mice. I didn't find them until later on. But anyway, that opened up another box. So that's how I did the boxes. I did the boxes by going through things that really didn't have anything to do with the Jehovah Witnesses. And then after that, when I got stronger, I could link little things, like with the congregation. And this happened in my mind and how they distorted my mind and how this happened and how this happened. But it takes a long time. And I want you to take your time when you do it. So I showed you an example of how I opened up the boxes. And I hope that really helped you. And the major point was the fact that the way we remember this, don't try and link events that happened in the world because you'll get lost. Just take it a step at a time. Don't worry about how old you were. Don't worry about what was happening. Don't worry about how, like I said, how old you are. Don't worry about anything. And then all that falls into place, because now I can see the timeline. As you go on, you can see a timeline, because Jehovah's Witnesses don't have a timeline. They just keep doing the same thing over and over and over again, which is still strengthening me for this YouTube to talk about how ex-Jehovah's Witnesses gain their strength and how they're very strong. So I'm building up on that, and I'm going to soon, I'm not going to time it, but I know I'm going to be strong enough to give that one. But that's another thing with Jehovah's Witnesses. The reason why you have to do it that way, because we do the same thing over and over and over again with no meaning. I mean, you never I'm not saying you graduate, but you never learn anything. You keep doing the same thing over. They keep making the same mistakes over and over again. And you go to the meetings and you go through that book that doesn't even mean anything. Babylon the Great has fallen. We went over that book maybe 3, 4, 5, 6 times, and the book doesn't mean anything. We went over the truth book. That doesn't mean anything. You know, the Tuesday night, I don't know if they still do that. And, you know, I guess the ministerial I think I got some points out of the theocratic ministry school. I mean, we're giving, you know, talks and everything. Some things, and I used to like the ladies giving the householder and everything. I love those skits. But you keep doing it over and over again, and it's for no reason. And it just, there's no like holidays, there's no anything. You have all these get-togethers, you know, with no timeline about anything. So anyway, so that's how to break through, to get to learn more about yourself by going through these boxes. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.